Whenever someone purchases a property in Portugal, there are two applicable taxes. And then each year, whenever someone is owner of a property in Portugal, there is an annual property tax, which is called IMI. And it does not consider the property price. Actually, it considers an amount that is much less than the property price. So I can tell you that, for example, a property that costs, let's say, 280,000 euros, you will pay roughly taxes around 14,000. And same property, you can pay like an IMI of 100 euros, 200 euros.
Yes. What about newly built villas? What about commercial property? What about the tax when they rent out their property short-term and long-term? What about if they want to rent their property out as Airbnb? How does it work tax-wise? Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. I am Mia, the founder of Mall Portugal, a property advisory company that helps you buy and rent in Portugal like a local. Today we don't have Rafael with me, but we actually have a lawyer with me. It's one of the lawyers we work the most in Portugal, Natasha. And we will talk about some property tax related questions that people have, and hopefully this episode will give you some clarity, so stay to the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell below. That really helps us out to push videos like this every week. So, hi Natasha, how are you?
Mia, all good, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today, because usually we have a lot of questions regarding property tax or the lawyer-related question that it's the best answered by the lawyers. That's why we always have even disclaimer in some of our videos, because we're not lawyers. So I'm very happy you can be here to answer some questions to our potential client, and sometimes our followers on social media, they would have questions like this as well. So today I want to ask you about property tax and the cost of purchasing and holding property in Portugal.
Okay, so whenever someone purchases a property in Portugal, there are two applicable taxes that are paid only once. So whenever you buy a property, it's a property transfer tax. It's a progressive rate, so it really takes into account the property price. It goes from 1% to 8% if we are talking about the property for housing purposes. And you also have a stamp duty tax, which is a fixed rate of 0.8% over the property price. So these taxes are paid once you buy a property in Portugal. And then each year, whenever someone is owner of a property in Portugal, there is an annual property tax, which is called IMI in Portugal, that you pay every year. And it does not consider the property price. Actually, it considers an amount that is much less than the property price, which is the evaluation that is conducted by the tax authority. So I can tell you that, for example, a property that costs, let's say, 280,000 euros, you will pay roughly taxes around 14,000. And the same property, if it has a lower evaluation conducted by the tax authority, you can pay like an IMI of 100 euros, 200 euros.
Yes, exactly.
So it's really not related to the property price.
Yeah, exactly. This is very difficult to explain sometimes to our clients, because, for example, most of our clients are coming from US, right? The property tax for holding the property is very heavy. And then when they come to Portugal, we will explain, you know, for example, the 300,000 property, you probably will pay 500 to 600 euros per year. They were like, no, this is no way, like it can be so low. But actually it's the Finanças tax authority's evaluation. This number usually is updated, I don't know, 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So maybe you bought it for 300,000 euro this year, but maybe on the Finanças side, your property is worth 70,000 euros.
Yeah.
And no one is updating this. Why? Exactly for this reason, right?
Yeah. So it's completely different, the property price right now, the market price, and the evaluation that you have that is conducted based on the areas of the property, the location, typology. So it has a lot of characteristics. They will never be close to the market price, I would say. So that's why the property annual tax that someone will pay will be a tax that is really low.
Yeah.
But still, there's a simulation that can be done whenever the property is chosen, and we have access to one of the documents that are related to this, which is a tax certificate. So either way,
yeah. But in general, because we're talking about property with some years already, right? What about newly built villas? Because I know this is sort of in a different category.
Yes, it's correct. So it's the same thing. So the same tax. Normally, what happens is that this IME tax, it ranges from 0.3% to 0.45% over that amount that is defined by the tax authority. Even if we are talking about a new building, we will never be close, I would say, at least according to my experience, we will never be close to the market price. So, but even if we were, it's just basically doing the calculation from a tax that is lower 1%. So it's nothing, I would say.
Yes.
At least compared to the local taxes that you have whenever you have a property outside of Portugal.
Yeah, that's true. What about commercial property?
Okay, if we are talking about a commercial property, the tax is not this one. So you will still have stamp duty tax of 0.8% whenever you buy the property. But then you don't have a progressive rate, but rather a fixed rate of 6.5% applicable to the property price.
Okay. And the house of holding, the IME for the commercial property?
It's the same thing. So we are talking about the same rate.
Okay. And since we're in the topic of tax and related to property, what about the tax they need to pay when they rent out their property short-term and long-term?
Okay. If we are talking about rental income, so even if it's a short term, but it's an agreement and it's not an Airbnb, we are talking about stamp duty that is paid only once when registering the lease agreement in the tax authority. It's 10% of over 1 monthly rent.
Okay.
And on the year following the one that the income was starting to be received by the landlord, the owner of the property, there's also needs to be declared in the annual tax return this income that was received. And the tax applicable to the rental income is 28%.
Okay.
But over the income that was received, there are some deductions that can be done. For example, condominium fees. The IME that we were talking about is also deductible. Some costs with works in the property, so you can still deduct on the income some expenses that you have with the property.
Even this long-term lease?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks for the clarification of the long-term rental. What if most of our clients are in this scenario, they are overseas, for example, they applied for Golden Visa or they just purchased something in Portugal as investment property. They don't live here. They have a NIF number. They're not tax resident. If they want to rent their property out as Airbnb, how does it work tax-wise for their income?
Sure. So whenever we are talking about income that comes from an Airbnb, we are talking about a business income and not rental income. So the difference here is that the tax that is applicable to non-residents is 25%. But what we have here, whenever we are talking about Airbnb, is that we have an automatic deduction of 65% or 50%. It depends on the location of the property, and is an automatic deduction, which means that you will not be able to insert manually expenses that you had with the property, for example, works or condominium fees. So that's the main difference from this category, which is a different one, business, rather than the rental income whenever you have a long-term rental.
That's very clear. Thank you. So thank you so much, Natasha. I'm sure this helps a lot to clarify some of the questions you might have. If you enjoy videos like this, please let us know in the comment below. Okay, thank you so much, Natasha, and see you guys in the next one. Bye.